There we go. Welcome, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Launch 2020 Q4 Day 2. My name, as always, is Brian Bork, and I am here with Learn On Demand Systems as a representative of our readiness team. My title is Senior Technical Readiness Trainer, and today we are going to talk about how to save you both time and money by making and using the template gallery within Lab On Demand Systems. Now, you got a sneak peek of this yesterday during the keynote if you attended. If you didn't attend, well, sorry to hear that, but I'm looking forward to covering a little bit more information about the template gallery and how it works and what you can do and how you go about actually adding to it from your own company, and also about how you save labs and move forward. So a little basic housekeeping, just some things to keep in mind. One, please make sure that you keep your microphone muted and your camera off unless I call on you, and when we're doing questions. However, you can type questions into the chat. We have an entire team who I will introduce shortly who can help you out with any of the questions that you might have. We do have a representative of our technical services team, both of the technical services team members who are here. We have Ronald and Andrew. Andrew's here to sort of learn as much as answer questions, but Ronald's here to answer questions. We also have Ryan Hall here. He is here with our technical services team also as a tier 2 personnel. And then we've got Kristen Louie, who is here to make sure that I do my job and that your questions are answered. She also is the one who sent you all of those wonderful links to your calendar invites, as well as she will be the one who will be typing out a lot of the links that we will be referring to whenever we get them. So our staff is standing by and here to answer any questions you might have, so don't hesitate to type those questions in. And with that, let's go ahead and dive right into our subject. Do not forget that when you are working with Learn On Demand Systems, you can post anytime during our session and you could win a gift card. All you need to do is take a picture of you or your screen while you're attending. You don't even have to hold up a copy of the newspaper with today's date on it so that we know that it's actually you today. If you do have a picture of another session, you could always link that. But make sure that you tell people you're attending Launch Q4 and hopefully not be lying and tell them you're having a wonderful time. We have some great topics to discuss yet today, so we are looking forward to that. When you do post, however, make sure you link us through the tagging system inside of either LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. I just saw Avery's comment about people getting a newspaper, and I will let you know that my wife has been subscribed to a newspaper for many, many years, and we still get a paper copy. In addition to that, she used to work for that newspaper and doesn't anymore, and still pays them to deliver that lovely piece of paper that hardly ever gets recycled. Anyway, please go out and tag us and you could win a gift card. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? Well, before we talk about how you can create a lab in minutes, we're going to talk about the basics, how things work together inside of Lab on Demand. In a lot of cases, we often forget the rudimentary basics when we just say, well, I just want to put this lab together. So we're going to talk about how you what sort of terms and how everything is interconnected, the interconnectedness of all things, if you will. Then we're going to talk about how you create a lab in minutes. We're going to talk about how you can build up your own gallery of templates, and then how you commit your changes to your labs. I do really respect the fact that we're still in chat having a conversation about newspapers, because I still think that they can be relevant. So it's nice to know that there are people out there who still get a newspaper, like me. I realize that I'm old and stuff like that, but it's nice to know that others are doing this. All right, you don't need to keep looking at me. You should be paying attention to the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera, and you can go ahead and just sit back, relax, and try to absorb some of this terminology, because we're going to be talking about terms that you should be using already. If you're not already using these, by all means, go ahead and pay attention, take some notes. The recording of this, I should also mention this is being recorded. The recordings for this will be available after the fact, so you can always go back and review this session. But these are the basics. These are the terms and phrases that we use, and not everybody uses these. And that's one of the difficulties that people face when they're trying to make labs, is they don't understand the terms we're using. So let's get those definitions out of the way right away. At the top of the chain is the lab series. This is the identifier and container for all of the lab contents. Your lab series is what delivers your content to APIs, to LTI, to our TMS. So the lab series is really, really important. Lab profile is just as important, because it is a specific lab. You can think of it as like module 1, module 2, module 3. Each one of those would be its own lab, or it might be all modules and it's one lab. But regardless, a lab profile, a successfully created lab profile, is what gets you your lab launch button. Now that's inside of Lab on Demand. That's for you to be able to launch and be able to run the lab and modify it and things like that. That's what you need in order to do that. Then there is the virtual machine profile. This is a description of the virtual machine or machines within your lab. So if you've got a Windows 10 machine, you're going to tell it how much RAM it's going to use, how many processors, virtual processors as it is, what hard drives, what network card or cards you're going to use. All of that information is described within the virtual machine profile. Then there's removable media, which is a link to a ISO file in your storage to your lab. This is what gives you the ability to insert digital media into your lab. So if you want somebody to install software off of a DVD or CD that they mount, you can actually do that inside of your lab through removable media. So those are the basics. Then there are some more advanced concepts. There's the organization. This is the organization you're working with is your set of resources within Lab on Demand. Your storage, your lab profiles, your lab series, your VM profiles, all of those have an organization. In most cases, you will find yourself working within your development org, and then when you're ready, you're going to move it over to your production org. That's the second set of bullet points here. But remember, your organization includes your storage, and your storage is your file storage within Learn on Demand, or Lab on Demand, excuse me, for virtual machine hard drives and ISOs. Now, I want to be very clear about this. When you create screenshots and link them inside of your instructions, when you create the actual instructions themselves, your resources for labs, like maybe network diagrams and stuff like that, all of that stuff is stored in blob storage. That is completely independent of your storage in Lab on Demand. The reason we do that is because you don't need access to that. We handle the access to that. But the really important thing is that your storage is a place for you to be able to put things by uploading files to it, or for you to clean up if you've got a bunch of, like, you've deleted the virtual machine profile, but the actual VHD or VHDXs or VMDKs, if you're working inside of vSphere, will actually reside. A lot of times storage is very easy to forget about. And I want you to understand that doing good lab hygiene is more than just deleting lab profiles and virtual machine profiles that are no longer used. There is also a set of storage out there. And if you have storage that has no links to it, you should be keeping that clean. Enough of the preaching. It isn't a part of our discussion today, other than you might see a couple of examples of where VHD and VHDX is. But it is important for both your development org and your production org to make sure that your storage is in good shape. All right. Now, remember, working within your development org, that is where you do all of your development work. That should only be used for testing. You would never use that as your, well, it should only be used for lab development, which includes testing out your lab and making sure it works, but it also includes making changes to the VM and making changes to the instructions. But in the production org, on the other hand, this is where your labs are finalized and delivered to the end users. And the way I like to get the point across here is, when you are working in your production org, every launch has a cost associated with it. In other words, that's it. Production org is where you don't launch inside of Lab on Demand. You launch from external sources, whether it be LTI, API, or our TMS, aka LMS. All right, now, I know I said that was the more advanced, but there are other things. For example, you may be working with containers. You may be working with AWS or Azure Cloud Slice. You could be working with lifecycle actions. You could have activities inside of your instructions. There's the whole training management system. Yes, there are other things that we have around. Not everybody is making virtual machine-based labs, but the template system that we're going to show you is primarily available for the virtualization, because that's what a lot of our customers use. I'm not saying that everything we're doing here is going to apply to you, because you might be working with containers, for instance, and we don't have a containers example out there. But what we're going to be talking about is going to apply to a large portion of you. So make sure that you understand that while we may not cover it specifically here, there are other technologies. And if you want to find out about those technologies, we've got the resources to help you out. We've got plenty of videos. We have webinars that have taken place all throughout 2020, and there'll be even more of them coming in 2021. All right. So before we dive into this, it is very important that I get my chance to give you my analogy of how Lab on Demand systems, or the Lab on Demand systems, work. Lab series equates to the book cover. It's how you identify a book on a bookshelf. It is also what contains or holds all of the book's contents. So lab series equals book cover. A lab profile is a chapter in that book. All right. You might have one chapter that is the entire book, or you may have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, just like you might with lab profiles. The VM profile are like the sentences or the words or the punctuation. It's the stuff that makes up the content of the lab profile and lab series. And then last but not least, every once in a while in a book, you might find a picture or two or an illustration. Removable media is just taking that book thing to completion. So it is important to remember that the lab series contains all of the contents. The lab profile is what gets you the launch button, is like a chapter. You fill in those chapters with content, and that content is your VM profile. And then removable media equals pictures. So that's my book analogy, and that's one that I've used since I started with this company over 7 years ago. We're almost coming up on 8 years now that I've been with the company. And it's always worked for me as an illustration, at least until we come up with a brand new way of doing things, which so far, this analogy is held. So hopefully it will continue to go in the future. All right, don't blink. We're going to build a lab. Well, we're going to talk about how you build a lab first, and then we'll build a lab. So let me move out of our slides and into our demonstration. And I want to be mindful of our time. So if I am going too quickly, make sure that you type your questions in. There will be time at the end to be able to put in to actually do a Q&A at the end. All right, so if any of you have ever worked in lab development inside of Lab on Demand prior to 3 or 4 months ago, you should see something that looks very familiar to you. This is what we call our lab profile edit page, or the page where you edit lab profiles. And this is how we used to have to create lab profiles. And we used to have to come in here and fill in a bunch of fields that you can see here. We'd have to create our networks and our virtual machines, our removable media. We would maybe throw some cloud in here, create our lifecycle actions, set up our advanced settings, and so on. This is the old-fashioned way. The new hotness is the template gallery. And you saw an illustration of this. I'm going to show you an illustration again just because it is that quick and easy to do. Plus, we need to have something that I'm going to work on in order to be able to give you a illustration of exactly how easy this is. So whether you're here on your dashboard page or if you're on your admin page, if you click on create a lab profile, before I go forward, I just have to show you this because quite honestly, it just makes me happy to show this. If you go up to your name and you set your theme to dark theme on the admin page, you get a very, very cool star field. And then that sticks with you there for a while. You can't do it on any other page. It's only on the admin page. So if you're on the dashboard page, it's just a regular background. But anytime you switch from a light theme to the dark theme, it's only the first time you do it too. Let's see if I can refresh here. Let me go here, and that sets that, and then go back here. But I just like to show this off. I know most of you probably don't care. There it is. Avery said it would be funny, or it would be neat if it went into plaid, but it doesn't. It only takes us to the dark side. It doesn't take us all the way to plaid. Unfortunately, I don't like the dark theme, so I like light and airy, so I'm going to stay here. But anyway, now that I've done that, let's go ahead and create a lab profile. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you do it here or from your dashboard. When you first sign in, you typically end up at your dashboard. It's just as easy to do it from there. You just click on Create Lab Profile, and it takes you to your template gallery. Now, the template gallery is built for you from us. We have a collection that we have put together of templated virtual machines. These are base machines that have just the OS and in some cases have some additional tools installed. For example, you can see here that the Windows 10, second Windows 10 setting has dev tools. So Visual Studio, SQL Server, and more. Visual Studio Code's on there. I think Notepad++ is on there. There's lots of development tools on there. And you see here that we've got the Ubuntu machines and the CentOS. Here are the desktops that are out there. Then we also have our combination platter, if you will. We've got Kali Linux and Windows 10, or we've got Windows 10 and Server 2019. All of these are also available between Hyper-V and vSphere. Now, this is the question that always comes up at this point, which is, well, which one of these should I pick? Which one is the best? There is no the best, right? This is, there are pluses and minuses to every lab platform, whether it be or whether it be in our data centers. Now, for you, our data centers are just another form of the cloud, right? I remember a sticker that said there is no cloud, there's just other people's computers. And that's really true when you look at our data centers. When you are creating a lab in either the Hyper-V platform or the vSphere platform, those are just the servers and hosts that we're giving you to use, and you're building up these profiles, which are templates that allow you to design what everybody who clicks on the launch button is going to get. Ultimately, that's the reason you're doing this. So I'm not going to tell you to use Hyper-V. I'm not going to tell you to use a base machine over using DevTools. You need to find out which of these is going to be the one that you want to use. As far as Hyper-V versus VMware, my suggestion, and it is only a suggestion, I would not even say this is a recommendation, my suggestion is to stick with Hyper-V unless there's a specific reason you want to go to vSphere. Okay. Now, if, for example, you want to have actual screen scaling instead of screen resizing, maybe vSphere is a better option for you. But in that way, it is not going to, there's no major plus or minus. The screen scaling does a great job of giving you an entire screen, but so does the screen resizing, which kind of notches up and fills as much of the screen as possible using the Hyper-V tools. Then there's the whole, do I have the integration tools that I need for doing scoring and things like that? Sticking with Hyper-V gives you more options. Going to vSphere gives you more, I don't know, sort of gadgets for being able to do what you need to do. For example, the virtual networking in vSphere tends to be a little bit more designed towards the capability of being able to deliver monitoring and why can't I think of the word? Network diagnostics. There, that's what I was trying to think of. It gives you the capability of being able to work with actual packets and the snooping and things like that. But that doesn't mean it can't be done in Hyper-V. It's just not the same, and not the there's not as many articles about how to do that in Hyper-V. So we're going to be dealing with Hyper-V today, but I want you to know that the action that we're doing is going to be exactly the same if you're using vSphere. I like to use the DevTools model just because it gives me something to be able to show you, like if I wanted to make a script or something like that. But it's the most compact unit that we have is the Windows 10 base. It just doesn't have a bunch of excess stuff on there. I see a question out there. Is there a light version of Ubuntu Desktop? Well, when you install Desktop, you're already sort of not doing the light version. We do have the Ubuntu server with terminal access, but if you are doing if you do the Ubuntu, it is the full install. It is not the one. Yeah. So we don't have that specific version. Now, Warren's question is going to come up when we talk about making your own template gallery. So I'm going to address that. And I see Ronnie's already out there and typing as well. All right. So I'm going to go with the Windows Server. And now I could preview this. I could preview it and launch it and see if it is what I want. I can also make this a favorite. And by the way, when you have 2 pages worth of things to search, anytime you're over one page, finding something and you go, oh, I want to check that one out. And so like maybe I want to take a look at both of these. Now, when I click on my filter over here, that's automatically comes up. I can click on my favorites and I only see the ones that I have favorited. All right. So it is a really handy tool. And as I unfavorite those, they go away from my favorites. By the way, you can also get more screen real estate by clicking on the up arrow for the filters. By default, it will automatically be down. All right, so I'm going to create a lab profile in just a few clicks. So if we had just started our conversation, this would be where James picked up and showed you how quick and easy this is. So I need to give it a number, and I'll call this 000. I'm going to call this Brian's Demo Lab 2, just because I want to make sure it's not like anything else. I'm using this wonderful organization out here who makes great labs, Brian B. Associates. And notice now under the lab series, I can either choose an existing, pardon me, I can either choose an existing lab series and do a search and use one, or I can create a brand new one just for this. And so I can go in here and create one, and we'll call this Launch Q4 Demo Lab. All right. Now, this is going to go into this lab series, and this lab profile and these virtual machine profiles are all going to automatically get created inside of my org. Now, your organization is really important. Make sure you're putting this into your development organization. Otherwise, once again, launches inside of production environments are typically subject to billing. So you do not want to be launching, other than the one time you have to launch, you don't want to be launching inside of production. So the tags are automatically there because the environment is tagged. That gives you the ability to do a search in the gallery. You could remove those tags and have it just be, something that you look for, but it does make it easier to find if you put tags in it. And then our expected durations and maximum durations are, as always, important. So we'll go ahead and cover those right now. Your expected duration, and I want to be very clear about this. You are the lab developer. You should know this answer. How long will it actually take if somebody sat down beginning to end and didn't get up, didn't get interrupted? How long would it take them to do that lab? And no fudging the number, because you go, well, there's going to be a half hour of training, or the half an hour of instructor-led presentation in the middle of this. I want to say, if you sat down and had a beginning user sit down and do this lab from beginning to end without any interruptions, how long would it take them to do? Don't add in the instruction time. Add in only the actual amount of time that the user is going to be spending doing the lab. And this is a prediction. This is not something we're going to hold you to. All right. The expected duration is an important duration because that's how long it takes. The maximum duration is the actual timer that you get when you launch the lab. That's how long they have in the lab to complete it. Just remember that in most cases, if you're designing a lab, not an exam, by the way, this is an excellent way of building up an exam virtual environment. You get it all perfected. You get everything, locked down and whitelisted and blacklisted, and you get everything all set up. And then you make a template out of it so that you can build exam environments quickly and easily. Great use for this tool. But back to the maximum duration. The maximum duration can never exceed 2 times the expected duration. Okay. So that's the whole lecture on durations. Always think about it from the time, the aspect of, if my student sat in the lab, went beginning to end, and did this lab, how long would it take? That's my expected duration. How much do I want to do? Up to 2 times that expected duration is the actual timer that they get. And remember that saving and resuming will give them extra time on that timer, so that if they save, go to lecture, and then come back and resume, they will pick up right where they left off, and the timer will be right where it was. So they have enough time to be able to complete what they need to complete. So just remember those rules of thumb. All right. So that's all I have to fill out. long list of, and boom, that's it. I've got a launch button. I don't have to go in and link anything. I don't have to do any networking. I already have my profile filled in. Here's my network. Here's my virtual machines. If this had built-in removable media already, it would be there and it would be good to go. So this is great, Brian, I hear you say. Well, maybe I don't hear you say it because I told you to keep muted because I'm a control freak. But this is great, but I want my own templates. I want to do my own thing. I want to make this. Thank you, Avery. I want to make this my own. How do I go about actually doing that? Well, the good news is it's really, really difficult. And I'm saying that sarcastically. Click on Edit Profile on any lab. Click on Advanced. Scroll down, and right here, there is a Publish to Organization Template Gallery. Now, if for some reason you do not see this in your world, there is a permission that is needed. All you need to do is reach out to either your AE, account engineer, or account executive, your TAE, your technical account engineer, or our support team, which is support@learnondemandsystems.com. Otherwise, at any page, you can click on live chat and talk to an agent and get that permission available. You may have to log out and log back in, but it is a organization-wide setting, so once it's set for you, it will also be set for any other lab developers. And remember, this only applies to lab developers. This doesn't end up in the hands of students or ops managers or stuff like that over on the TMS side. So all you need to do is check this box and click on Save. So I'm going to, and always put in a note. There's sort of a discussion going on as to whether or not we make note be a required field instead of an option field. Because right now I could just click on OK, but we're thinking about making this required just because it's important to know what people are doing inside the lab. So even if somebody just puts in this, that is, you know that somebody took the time to actually type something. But in all actuality, you should automatically put in a note, and I'm going to say created a template for the gallery and click on OK. And that's it. Now I'm going to go back to my dashboard. I'm going to click on Create Lab Profile. And if I kind of lose this, right now, by the way, it's automatically set to sort by popularity. I can do what's new, and then I will see mine here because it's the newest one that's been created. I can also sort it by name, and then because I put Brian's demo lab, but by default, it does popularity. If I want to find something quickly and easily from my organization and not from Learn on Demand Systems, I can click on My Organizations, and there it is. Please note, I did not put a description in my lab. One thing that I always tell people is that this template does not prevent this from just being the lab profile that you use to be able to build things. Just remember that this template, let's say you go in and make a modification to the VM profile or the instructions, those will transfer through to the next person who clicks on create and makes a template. So if I wanted to edit this, all I have to do is look for this little pencil icon here and click on edit. And then I can go in and say, this is a sample lab profile built during our 2-4 event, and then save. Then go back to my dashboard, create a lab profile to get to my template gallery. And now when I go to my organizations, you'll see there's the description comes through. This is why it's important to fill in the fields, even though you don't have to fill them in as part of the requirement for building the environment. A lot of people ask, well, okay, Brian, that's great, but what if I wanted to build just a cloud environment, or what if I wanted to build a container environment, or I already have a bunch of virtual machines and I just want to put them together into a lab profile? You always have the button in the upper right to go back to the old way of doing things, and that is click on Create Custom Environment, and that gives you the ability to create a lab profile from scratch, putting in whatever media and type of lab you want to do. Okay. So far, we've talked about how to build a lab profile in a few minutes, save that lab profile, new lab profile, as a template for others, but we haven't actually talked about what it takes to actually modify that lab. So let's take a look at what that takes. So I'm going to go and find my lab profiles. I'll do a quick search here, and we will go to the Launch Q4 demo. Here's our lab series. Here is the lab profile and the VM profile contained within that series. Let's go ahead and go back to the page where we started off. All right, so we created this template. We created this from a template. Let's go ahead and launch this up. Now, one of the things that James showed off and I'm excited about is we have pre-installed several instructions for you about what you can do with the instructions, right? And you can get rid of those very quickly and easily. You can put in your own markdown. You can link to your GitHub. We have sessions from the Q3 launch, as well as webinars about adding instructions to your labs and how you do that. Just so you know, this first launch comes up and it says, hey, this will launch in 15 seconds. It's never going to launch in 15 seconds. It will launch quickly because this lab has been distributed to all of our data centers and things like that. But it is not going to launch within 15 seconds. 15 seconds is what it assumes it's going to take if there are no virtual machines there. That's why it's got that initial countdown. So your launch time is always going to be longer than that. It will be somewhere between 1 minute and 2 minutes. If it goes a little over 2 minutes, that's okay. If you start getting into the 3 to 5 minute, there's probably an issue with getting the launch. You should probably reach out to our help desk once again. I mentioned the live chat feature down on the bottom right. There is also a help screen just by going to the top menu and going to help. And then you have the ability to click on the little headphones and it'll give you the ability to call us. You can reach out and submit a support ticket, but I'll be honest with you. I don't know if you saw the numbers from Corey's presentation yesterday, but a lot of questions can be answered with just either getting a ticket or talking to an agent. Some of our, like on our TMS side, there's an actual search bot that will give you the ability to do that. Otherwise, you can also search for help up here, and we'll just put the word launch in. And here you go. They give you all of the information that you might need. All right, going back to our lab, which is now up and running. Now this is, as I mentioned, a completely base machine. It's got Windows and that's about it, all right? Doesn't give us a lot of capability of being able to really have a lot of flexibility to modify things. So I'm going to do something very simple and basic. I'm just going to put a new folder on the desktop called lab files, which is very typical. And then I go in here and I'm going to create a new text file. And we'll call this Brian is pretty good. I used to put in Brian is great, and I thought that was a little too optimistic about myself. So Brian is pretty good, is self-sufficient there. And so we've got that, and we've got it on here. And now we're going to want to save this so that this is always here for everybody who clicks on the launch button. So how do I do that? Well, we used to go up to the developer tools, and then we used to do what's called capture diff disk. By the way, Warren, I see your question. I will address it once I get this commit change underway. We used to go here to the developer tools and click on capture diff disk or differencing disks. There we go. But now we have a new location. You just go to your hamburger menu and go to save. Now, when you save, you can either save my lab instance so that I can return to it. That is your lab instance, and you can return to it. That doesn't mean that every time somebody clicks on the launch button, they're going to be getting all of these changes that you've made. All right. Or I can commit my changes and update this lab profile, or I can commit my changes and create a brand new lab profile. The first one is the one that the first commit is the one I'm going to use because I want to update my lab profile so that it always has this folder and this file on it. So I click on next. I want to put in a note, and I will say added folder and file to desktop. Watching me type is just so exciting, isn't it? All right, now this next part is something that is relatively new to the concept of differencing disks, because before, whenever we wanted to give a machine more memory, we had to go in, modify the memory, relaunch the lab, or close the lab we were on, modify the memory on the VM profile, relaunch the lab with the new, and then maybe make a couple of adjustments to make sure it's stuck, and then do it. Now, if we wanted to increase or decrease the RAM or the processors, we can do it right here. So let's up this RAM to 8 gig and decrease the processors to 2. And then, because I did change the hard drive, or the virtual machine's hard drive, I do have to put this in, and I'm going to put the same thing, added folder and file to desktop. And I am going to specify the location, and the way you specify it is by highlighting it. You see how I clicked on it and turned blue? Make sure you do that, otherwise you won't actually be selecting that location. So you click on specify and click on the location of your storage. And remember, if you have folders and stuff like that, you can go view them by just clicking on this down arrow, and you'll get more folders. My storage doesn't have that folder structure built up. Click on OK, and off I go to commit the changes. Now, as with capturing differencing disks, anybody who's worked in our system will tell you the amount of work that you've done on the machine is not a direct reflection of how long it will take to commit your changes. Committing changes is a writing technology, or is a writing request, and it has to go out and write to a bunch of hard drives. Now, these hard drives are all SSD, NVE, MOUSE. They are the highest end rated storage that you can get. However, it is being distributed across data centers, so committing your changes can take some time. So rather than have you focus on the fact that I'm committing changes, I would like to address a couple of the questions there. Do the VMs support nested virtualization? They do support nested virtualization, but if you go into the lab profile, and by the way, Ronnie did answer this absolutely correctly. If you do go into, I'm sorry, not the lab profile, but the virtual machine profile, which, by the way, you should not edit while it's live, but I will go in and open this up and edit to show you. There is a enable nested virtualization. You need to make sure that that is checked. Now, as Ronnie said, all of the Windows virtual machines in the public library, or the public template, the template that we publish, not the one that you do, are available, and it's already turned on. So you can turn that on quickly and easily. You could do Docker, you could do Windows services for Linux, you could put in the Hyper-V as well. And then Avery asked, and Ronnie even checked to make sure the Ubuntu VMs have it turned on as well. So you can use that as your virtualization. One suggestion I would have is if you're going to do nested virtualization in Linux, I would recommend doing it with the vSphere environment. Our processors are equivalent to cores. Let me just check on the status here. All right, still committing my changes. It is sort of cores. Now, the reason I'm sort of dancing around this issue is because there are actually, if you use the vSphere family or the vSphere platform, there are actually two different settings of processors and cores. Regardless of which way you do this, this is all based on what we call vCPUs. So we have these monstrous hosts that run hundreds of virtualization sessions on them. Each of those hosts have a lot of CPUs and cores. And when we talk about CPUs, we're talking about the physical processors, and those processors also have lots of cores. And I can't give you exact numbers because I don't have them off the top of my head, but we're talking like a single machine has, in some cases, hundreds of actual physical processing cores available. But in most cases, our virtual machines are using vCPUs, and vCPUs are a virtual component and they are generated. However, the way they're generated are slightly different. So let me show you a inside of our VM profile here. You can set your number of processors, and that is treated as sort of the number of cores. Avery, Avery asked on that why I lowered the processor computing power when raising the RAM. I did that to make sure that it was different than the original. So when we go look at the template, that we know that there's actually a difference there. Plus, if I were actually doing this to be effective, because all of this machine is a base machine, I would have actually lowered the processor to 1 and lowered the RAM to 2. In this particular case, I'm pretending that I need a lot of RAM, but don't need as much processing power. That's very rarely the case. But let me show you a quick create lab profile. And I'm going to take a vSphere version of the Windows 10 base and create. And I'll call this 0000, and we'll call this Brian's vSphere demo lab. Once again, I could put the description in and have it show up so that I can use it as a template in my system. And I'm going to go ahead and put this into my already existing Launch Q4 demo series. And I'm going to click on OK. And now when I go to this virtual machine, remember this one is in vSphere, and I go to Edit. Notice that I have number of processors, and then I have number of cores per processor. All right. So the number of cores per processor is the ultimate vCPU. So you take the number of processors, multiply it by the number of cores per processor, and that will give you your total vCPU count. Whereas on Hyper-V, it is just number of processors that become the vCPU count. And Chirag's question, my understanding is the price of a lab is based on a unit price per gig per hours of usage. Processor cores don't come into the equation, and that is absolutely correct. The question is correct. Processing cores do not come into the equation. Not everyone has the exact same billing model. Some people, because the way they do things are based on a flat rate, and then they get so many, they get so much amount of RAM that they can use, and that is concurrent usage. So there are a couple of different billing models, but in general, the cost of a lab is determined by the amount of RAM you're using and how long you're using it for. That's really what it is based on. But don't let that dissuade you from putting the right amount of RAM to do the job, okay? Now, I know that we're coming up to the bottom. Let me just make sure that my committing changes always seems to take longer than I want it to when I'm doing a demonstration. So what I would ultimately show you is what you would expect to see when I launch this lab from this point forward. It's always going to have the folder on the desktop with lab files, and inside of that folder is going to be the Brian is pretty good. Now, that might be something that I do want in my template gallery or that I don't want in my template gallery. Right now, it's in my template gallery, so any changes I make to that is going to be given to anybody who creates a lab from their template, from that template moving forward. So let's go back to the slides really quick. So the don't blink was all about the creation of the lab, not about committing the changes. All right, so everyone, please make sure you check out the LODS.1/documentation. This will give you information about lab building and committing changes, as well as everything else that you might need to know about Lab on Demand. We want you and strongly encourage you to please share your feedback with us. We have two different ways that we would like you to share your feedback. One of those is to go to the last activity in your class. When you came into your class, to click on Enter Classroom to come to this team meeting, there was an activity down there that was share your feedback. Please click on that and do share that feedback. We need to know what we're doing well and what we could improve in order to present even better launch event coming up in Q1 of 2021. And I can't encourage you enough to use the second feature. The LODS1/feedback is a very, very important feature that you have at your disposal. You fill out a form and you get your requested thing to the eyes of those who can make it happen. The lab developers, or I'm sorry, the code developers within our organization get direct access to features that our customers want. And that's what helps build our timeline of new feature requests that are going to be coming in the next quarter and in the future beyond that. Last but not least, do not forget to post a pic and tag us with your attendance here at Launch Q4, and make sure to tag us on either LinkedIn, Twitter, or either and, I don't know. Do it as many times as you possibly can, because our social media people are constantly getting notifications of when we're being tagged, and we go out there and thank you for your tag, and then we put the best posts and we give out gift cards for it. So don't hesitate to do that. And last but not least, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to open it up to QA.